negative thoughts are a trigger, right? And whenever that came in, because I'm trying to work on positive self-talk, that trigger was a trigger to think about the positive thought that I had already set up and is my safe spot, right? And I found that you can replace negative thoughts, but you can't just stop talking about them. And so I do apply that in business as well, because it is really easy to kind of get bogged down with your self-talk that you don't say out loud. You're not presenting to your team, right? You're doing the responsible thing on that side, but it builds up if you let it, right? So I always find I needed a trigger to say, okay, recognize it, I'm going right here. That's going to occupy my thoughts now.
Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project, changing the way the game is played. This podcast helps purpose-driven leaders unlock their highest potential so that they can play their biggest impact game. Welcome to the Leadership Launchpad Project, changing the way this game is being played. We are so excited to have you back in this locker room this morning because we have an athletically inspired leader who is also changing the game. I'm going to let my teammate, Leanne, introduce our friend Mike. Leanne, do you want to tell our audience?
Yep, absolutely. And we all know how excited you are this morning, Susan, to have a fellow athlete here with us. So on that note, I'm very happy to introduce our guest today, Mike Scarola. Mike has had a very interesting journey from Olympic athlete to working in finance and private equity, and now as the CEO at Butterfield and Robinson Luxury Travel. And I have had the good fortune to be on a Butterfield bike trip with a group that Mike had invited. So I've had the opportunity to see firsthand just how much work the company puts into creating a really incredible outdoor and active experience. So we're looking forward to our discussion today, Mike. And to start off with, it seems like your current position as CEO at B&R is pretty perfect for someone like you with your athletic background, and you're obviously very passionate about the outdoors. So why don't we start off by getting you to tell us how you ended up as the CEO at Butterfield?
Yeah, no problem. Look, Susan, Shelley, Leanne, thank you so much for being on. This is great. I love the energy that you guys bring to your podcast. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun here. So this is gonna be great.
Oh yeah.
And I love the topics that you bring to your listeners. So I'm hopeful that we can have something that's interesting here as well. So look, so you're dead on, Leanne. I do feel like I'm in a role in a job now that is just perfect for my background, and regardless of whether I'm the perfect person for it, it's a hell of a lot of fun. But my path here is pretty unconventional, which is kind of the path. If I give you the longer story, my whole path, I think, is a little bit unconventional. So I'm an East Coaster, grew up in the Halifax, Dartmouth area. When I was 9 years old, I found this sport. I was actually introduced to the sport by my parents, called canoe kayak. And so lived in Dartmouth. Dartmouth is the city of lakes. Whole bunch of lakes. One of them that I lived a 5-minute walk from was called Lake Banook. Had 3 canoe clubs, 2 rowing clubs, an international race course, national team athletes, Olympic coaches. And I started there as a 9-year-old that was just really going down to have some fun in the sun. So I'd get dropped off at 8 in the morning at this clean lake where you can drink the water. And I'd be in and out of paddling practices, swimming lessons, beach volleyball, chase the girls, go home sun-kissed at 4 o'clock. And my parents were super happy because I'd go to sleep, rinse and repeat. It was just the best way to grow up as a kid. I absolutely loved it. And that ultimately turned into a sport that I got really passionate about. I started to train more and more. By the time I was 13, it was kind of my main sport. And, since then, I trained for 15 years, 2 to 3 times a day, 6 days a week, 11 months of the year. And as I got older in my career, I was away, 3 to 6 months of the year in Florida when it was frozen up here in Canada, or in Europe racing. And so that was, foundational for so many things in my life. But the reason I say a bit unconventional, more so, I think that I was able to have success in the support. at the level that I did, because, my stats are 5'9", 160 pounds. That's basically what I was when I was competing too, certainly the same height. The weight was distributed a little differently, but it's basically about the same. And if you kind of compare that to, what is the average stature of a canoeer, that would be very much on the smaller side, right? So what do you have to do in sports when you're lacking in some areas and you need to make up for it? Well, this was a very simple equation. I had to be tougher, in better shape, and be better technically if I was going to be able to keep up with the older or the bigger paddlers. And I was decent when I was younger. Medals at Canada Games, went to Junior Worlds and represented Canada, but I was kind of lacking what was needed to kind of go to the next level. And one of the things that was pretty foundational in my life, which is often the case and a common thread for people in sports, is I found a coach who really changed things for me. And his name was Laszlo Ladarovsky, little tough as nails Hungarian who I joined when I was 19 years old. And he basically, he was like, if you remember, like Bella Carola, US gymnast coach. He was like really tough, but love you as well. And he certainly loved me, but he also beat me like a rented mule for about a decade. And he just kind of said, look, this guy says he wants to be good at this sport. It's not going to come easy for him. He's going to have to be tough as nails. So let's see if he can handle it. And so it was, he taught me some incredible life lessons about basically, putting your head down, having goals, working as hard as you can. And, someday you pull your head up and you moved up to an area that you never thought you could get to, just simply with hard work and goals. And so Chum was probably one of the biggest influences in my life, to be honest. And then so I went from there, and then I went into, when that was done, I went raced to the Olympics in 2004 when I was 28, and moved on. I'd done some education. I'd done my MBA and some of the levels of CFA for the finance. I started working in the Halifax market in banking, and then decided I wanted something that was much worse for my lifestyle. So I replied up to investment banking in Toronto, and was successful enough to. Yeah, well, I'd say the unconventional pieces, a couple of pieces there, because just to build on this theme. One is that I went to Dalhousie MBA. I actually didn't know anyone that did investment banking except for one past paddler teammate. But I no mock interviews, no preparation. I was lucky to land a job. And then when I started, I would call it mature associate, 31 years old, came up to a new city with a wife and a 1-year-old, which is not the way to start first year investment banking, because as you know, at least back then, I was working 90 to 100 hours a week, but it was really good alignment with my kind of paddling mentality, which is I can outwork anybody, and that goes a long way. I mean, you got to be smart, you got to be personable, but hard work goes a long way in that industry. So I thought it was a good alignment. And quite frankly, when I finished sport, I needed something to dig my teeth into, and I needed, because when you finish sport, you haven't done, built specific skills that are going to be valuable into your next job. You just have a whole, foundation of skills that are valuable. You're trying to figure out how to unlock those. I needed something to really, focus my energy on, because now I was the 9-year-old who was fallen out of the boat in investment banking, right? And I had to accept that. And I was okay accepting it because I had something to work hard towards and had a goal. And so just kind of went hard at that. Fortunately, was able to continue to populate the family. I have 3 daughters that are now 3 teenage daughters. I have the same wife. So we made it through those tough years. And then from there, I went to So I was investment banking for 12 years, managing director at RBC Capital Markets, and then I moved to private equity, which I think is kind of unconventional too for a senior investment banker to move to private equity. You normally see that more junior and that move, but not so much at that point, which was also fantastic. I did that for about 3 years. And along the way, in that path, I met George Butterfield. And so George Butterfield, Martha Butterfield are co-founders of Butterfield and Robinson. And to be honest, like most people that meet George Butterfield, you just want to spend more time with him. He is an unbelievable person, amazing human being. And so I did some consulting work for the board, and in a finance capacity. And that eventually built over multiple years to, can you join the board? Can you be the lead director? To, I'm condensing a long story, but we're thinking about making a leadership change. Would you consider stepping into the business and investing in the business? So that's what I did 3 years ago. And it took me off my finance track. It's a very different world. It's an amazing world. But I'm super happy where I'm at.
Wow. So many questions, right, ladies?
Sorry, I didn't give you any chance to
No,
stop.
it's amazing prime. It's an amazing prime. I feel like the place that I want to go first in terms of where my curiosity leads me is like you kind of skipped over this whole Olympic chapter in your timeline. And Butterfield and Robinson, correct me if I'm wrong, is an active adventure travel type of experience. And I got to feel like some of what you took from your athletic journey, but certainly competing at the Olympic level, like how did all of that show up in this like recent chapter of your leadership journey?
You know what? It just well, first it just feels so natural, right? And getting on the road with our guides. So what we do is I mean, historically, Butterfield and Robinson was active luxury travel. Think of hiking and biking in Europe, right? And we've expanded to be much more than that. We do a lot of incredible bespoke custom travel, but that was kind of the roots of it. And it's still the foundation of what we do. So I try to guide at least one trip each year.
Cool.
After Leanne and I were on a trip where I was the traveler, I then left from there and I went and guided a trip in northern Greece. And because it helps me put my feet in the sand, hand in the ocean, and just really get down and dirty in something that's so fundamental to what we do. But the athletic piece, like biking, the challenging hills that Leanne and I did, that we did in northern Greece with the travelers, I just love it. And there's no better way, I think, to see a new part of the world than on 2 wheels. It's just fantastic. So there is a great alignment in that. But I would also say, where we're focused on is not kind of that athletic, let's do a training camp ride here. This is your vacation. This is enjoyment. And if you actually want to go hard and challenge yourself, that's an option. And if you want to, take it a little easier and stop and take pictures and ride an e-bike, that's also fantastic as well. So it's not really a hardcore training camp that I've kind of jumped into here.
No, I had an e-bike, and just to be clear here for the audience, so I made it up once on an e-bike. Mike went up the hill on a regular bike and back down and came back up again on this hill. It was just unbelievable, the level of fitness. So just had to throw that in there.
Mike, I've got a question for you, and it's a bit of a piggyback off of what Susan said, but I want to know, like, what is the one lesson from your time as an elite athlete that's kind of directly shaped how you lead business today?
Wow, great question. I'd probably bring back, the most important lesson is probably on the hard work, setting goals, having confidence in that, because I've done it so many times in the past on setting goals that you don't think are achievable if you just start from day one. But by building a bridge, by building multiple goals and then putting the work ethic against it, so much is achievable. And having that confidence with my team and them feeling it, that, because I do believe it, right? I do believe we can accomplish a lot of things that might not seem feasible right from the beginning, I think is probably the biggest piece that I took away from athletics.
Awesome. That model carries the most weight, right? Katie?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
you got it. You got
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we talk a lot about beliefs here at Team Elite being mindset informed in our methodology. And I feel like that's maybe where I want to go next. Like we're hearing from a lot of our leaders right now that, yeah, their people are really struggling in these high performance teams with the level of uncertainty out in the ethers, right? Out in the world. And I feel like that's something that elite athletes, we get so comfortable with. There's so much uncertainty around us at every moment when we're competing, right? So
Yes.
our AQ, our adaptability quotient is relatively high coming out of athletics into leadership. But how do you ripple effect that out into your locker rooms with your teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough sometimes, right? And I learned some real basic, simple lessons on the mental training side with sport. And I found the most simple ones are the ones that resonate with me and that I could take further in life. And, the reality is, the simple adage of focus on what you can control is so important. It's so important in athletics. So lots of stuff would happen. And I don't know if it's going to be windy and I don't know if it's going to come from this side, which is good for me, or that side, which is bad for me because of the dynamics of the sport, or if it's going to be rainy, or if that person is going to be fast or slow. All stuff you can't control. Am I going to feel good? Who cares? All that stuff is in your big circle, right? And it's huge. There's so many things you can't control, and it's all stuff that's not going to help you if you spend time on it, right? And your little circle is all the things you can control, right? I can control my preparation. I can control what I eat. I can control my all my training. I can make sure my equipment's ready. I can make sure I execute my race plan. Forget about what everyone else is doing. And that mentality, I think, is so applicable to business. And it's the simple approach, very applicable, like in today's market, right? In 2024, right up to the end of 2024 for our business, it was a different environment than the uncertainty that's happened over the last 4 months, right? And that's the type of thing that we can't control that. But there's so much that we can control, right? But if we focus too much on that, if I focus too much on that, the stuff that I can't control and what should I do, really one can bog down the mood, bog down the energy, but it can chew up the time that you need to be spending on something else. So really trying to be committed to big circle, little circle, focus on the little circle, and write those things down. Has been super helpful. It was super helpful in sport, but it's also been helpful for me in business as well.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like that is the hardest thing to practice. It seems like such relatively simple advice, right? But I think it is the other lesson that you're talking about, right? In terms of that daily needing to prime that intentionality, right? In your awareness about the things that you can control and not. And I do feel like in a constantly ever-changing business environment, I think that is where we have to show up for our people, right? Is to make sure that we're continuing to bring their focus back to that which they can control.
Yeah.
Anything?
I think
Yeah.
just to build on that, like I think I'm sure you've explored this concept, but like the concept of self-talk is so powerful, right? Your internal voice, like what is it saying? And what I always found was just not possible for me is don't think about negative thoughts, right? I just never thought that really was achievable because sometimes it just comes in. My shoulder's killing me. I'm not feeling good. I'm exhausted. I'm going back to athletic days. And what I found is just a really simple tool is negative thoughts are a trigger, right? And whenever that came in, because I'm trying to work on positive self-talk, that trigger was a trigger to think about the positive thought that I had already set up and is my safe spot, right? And I found that you can replace negative thoughts, but you can't just stop talking about them. And so I do apply that in business as well, because it is really easy to kind of get bogged down with your self-talk that you don't say out loud. You're not presenting to your team, right? You're doing the responsible thing on that side, but it builds up if you let it, right? So I always found I needed a trigger to say, okay, recognize it. I'm going right here. That's going to occupy my thoughts now. Any founder-driven business, the ultimate challenge when the culture is incredibly incredible and it's been driven by the founder, the ultimate challenge for any of those businesses is how does that culture maintain itself when there's that day that comes that the founder's no longer there, right? And I talk openly about this with my team. I don't put that on myself solely. This is incumbent on all of us because we all know and all feel and understand George Butterfield, Martha Butterfield, and what they mean for the business and for the industry, quite frankly. Certainly I'm the leader on that, and I try to, I find these things on setting culture and what do you actually stand for, they really come out not in the easy, nice times, they come out in difficult times.
I have another question, just because I'm so curious. Like, and you're like, oh no, here she comes again. I want to know, like, somebody who is in constant high stakes pressure environments, from being, an Olympic athlete to now, being a CEO. How do you personally manage your own pressure? I know we've got the self-talk down and what you're managing on that, but when it comes to the pressure and sort of the physiology, right, and everything that happens in your body that we all feel, how do you personally manage pressure in high stakes environments?
Yeah, great question. Pretty simple formula for me too is exercise. I mean, so when you kind of tie it back to mindset, I think I'm guilty of a common flaw in the athlete mindset that also contributes to the success. And I'm just never satisfied, right? And I think to a fault, right? It helps me in a lot of ways, but what I've personally been working on over the last number of years is taking the little wins, right? Because even when I was achieved my, most proudest moments in sport, I just found when I look back, like I was very shortly after that going, okay, but what's the next thing? And never really taking the time to really enjoy what I accomplished. And that's symptomatic in a lot of athletes, but I don't think it works as well when you're a leader in business, especially in travel, because people are there for different reasons than just maybe perhaps what they're there for in investment banking, right? They really love this business. They really love the culture. They really love the travelers. And, thankfully, they don't all have this mindset that I have, right? Because I think that would probably be a challenge. So I think that conscious work on my side to take the little wins and celebrate them and take the time and take the breath. It's a pretty important thing that I'm personally continuing to work on, probably end up working on that for the rest of my life. But in terms of managing the stress, I do find, like this morning, I got out for a run with an old coworker, and it's not for the body, it's for the mind, right? It flushes it out, and for me, it doesn't have to be that long. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but it's pretty helpful.
Great answer.
So I'm curious, just because from having been on a bike trip and I've met a couple of the Butterfield and Robinson guides, and the exact number escapes me here, but Mike, I know that both of them had been part of Butterfield and Robinson for, it seemed like more than a decade. I mean, it was like long-term guides. So what was it like for you to step into the role of CEO at Butterfield and Robinson and, have to sort of manage and get into all of these relationships with people who have been part of the company for so long? Was it difficult? Was it easy? Just, give us a sense of what that was like.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a couple layers to that. First, the decision to change leadership happened in a single point in time. Some of the people in the company knew me, but not a lot. We have a good chunk of our workforce is remote. About half of us are in Toronto, about half of us are in our Burgundy or Tuscany office, or our planners are actually usually living in the location that they plan. So I didn't have the ability, and they are very valuable people and assets in our business, and I didn't have the ability to have a chat with them at the water cooler and have lunch with them. And so, they see this announcement and they go on LinkedIn and they see this banker is now running the company, and does he just want to sell it and pump and dump? Like what's going on here? So there's a huge amount of effort to the word that comes to me is transparency, right? For them to give them a chance to get to know Mike, right? So to open up the kimono in any way that I can, tougher virtually, but in order that they could start to form a view, which is the first part, and then secondly to build trust, and that took time. And I think the in-person is pretty important. That took a few months before I was able to see everybody in person. But that was a big challenge and a big effort in the beginning. And then on the guiding side, I mean, I started in this role in July and hadn't been on a Butterfield Robinson trip before. And in September, I was guiding my first trip with two very experienced local co-guides in Tuscany. And I'm sure that they were kind of like, oh God, we got the CEO here. Like this is a little bit tense, right? But I think, fairly quickly, however my approach put them at ease, right? And suddenly I was just the co-guide. I was just the junior co-guide to them, who they were teaching, which is exactly what I wanted, right? And so I was doing everything a junior co-guide is supposed to do. And I think it was an incredible learning experience for me, but I think it was pretty helpful for them to get a feel for, okay, what does this guy care about, right? What's he all about? And those words start to spread in a company, and so that was pretty helpful for them to see me in action and be able to form a view for themselves.
Now we're talking about culture.
Yeah. Well, and in terms of building trust, we always talk about just how important the authenticity piece is. As you said, the opening of the kimono and being transparent, and of course, you embody the model carries the most weight. Like you out there enthusiastically on a bike would calm a lot in terms of the guides, being able to see really what you care about and what's important to you, and be able to understand that you truly do care about the outdoor experience and what they're trying to do for all of the guests who are part of that trip.
We're a guide driven culture. The planners are incredible. They create the amazing masterpiece. Then the guides deliver it, right? And they create the experience, as you know, Leanne, after being on it. And George and Martha Butterfield, who founded our company, were the ultimate guides, right? And that permeates all the way through, and so super important piece of our business.
Now sorry, Susan, you go ahead.
No, go ahead, Shel.
No, I want to riff a little bit with you a bit on the culture piece, right? Because as you were just talking about, being the boots on the ground, being sort of letting them lead, and you kind of taking a bit of a back seat, the leader sets the tone when it comes to culture. For sure. So how do you approach building and sustaining a great culture? Like what are you looking for, and what do you want to infuse or inject into the business from a culture perspective?
Well, I'm in a really fortunate position, and the fortunate position is the culture of this business when I stepped in is so storied. Next year, we're going to be 60 years old. The founders are still in the business. George Butterfield is going to host a biking trip in Slovenia this year. And he did the same thing last year in Romania. He's 86 years old.
Wow.
And his ethos permeates through the whole company. So I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. And what's so fortunate for me being in this position, first time CEO, first time operator, first time travel business, is, George would not say that he's involved in operating the business, but he's an incredible mentor for me. And I get to see how he operates, how he thinks, how he approaches situations, what he cares about, which is the ultimate bones of our business, and traveler satisfaction. Where are we going to next? The guides, the planners. And that ultimately is where I get my inspiration on where we're trying to take this business, right? And like with any founder-driven business, the ultimate challenge when the culture is incredible and it's been driven by the founder, the ultimate challenge for any of those businesses is how does that culture maintain itself when there's that day that comes that the founder's no longer there, right? And I don't I talk openly about this with my team. I don't put that on myself solely. This is incumbent on all of us because we all know and all feel and understand George Butterfield, Martha Butterfield, and what they mean for the business and for the industry, quite frankly. Certainly I'm the leader on that. And I try to, I find these things on setting culture and what do you actually stand for, they really come out not in the easy, nice times, they come out in the difficult times. They come out in tough situations. How does this guy react, especially in the early days? And so I don't have a view, I don't have an objective of changing that. I want to build on it because I think the bones are so good and I think we can do a whole bunch of things better, but not from changing the culture standpoint. And so George has been approached because this brand is so good, so incredible in the marketplace. He's been approached so many times over the years for companies wanting to buy him. And another travel company buying Butterfield Robinson. I think if they had the right setup and they're large enough, they'd probably take it and make it even bigger than it is now, but it would look and feel different, right? And there's an old adage that a lot of our employees actually have at the bottom of their signature, and it's George. And it says, we never want it to be the biggest company in the world. We just want it to be the best. And that totally rings through with where we're focused in our target market, and contributes to the culture and the mentality that we take every day.
Legacy culture is an absolutely beautiful thing. And I loved what you said about standing on the shoulders of giants. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, quality over quantity, and teamwork makes the dream work. You can see where the sport shows up in that mentality or mindset right there. I feel like we're talking about all the success of your leadership journey. I'd love to hear about some lessons learned in terms of some of the mistakes that you've made. And because you just said you're new to a CEO role and operating the business. So do you feel like there's been one particular lesson along the way that's been really valuable that you've learned from maybe a mistake made?
Yeah, on the business side, well, I think I've, in getting up to speed, I made lots of mistakes. I think just the base, if I can be honest about myself, and I think about setting the strengths aside, where there are opportunities that I need to work on for myself, is like I can have a tendency to think a bit too much about decisions. And it's quite contrast to, because historically George just made decisions on gut, right? I kind of had a little joke that I would tell my team when I first came to Butterfield Robinson. I found it interesting because they use this sophisticated system to make decisions called the Hay system. Have you guys ever heard of the Hay system?
Tell our audience. I'm sure they haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called, hey, why don't we do it this way? No data, no analytics, it's gut, just pure
That's old
gut.
school. That's old school leadership, right?
It's old school, and George's gut is about as good as I've ever seen in any business, to be honest. But one of our strategic priorities is to use data to make better decisions, and so we certainly have done that. The team has really grown into that, and I see them using gut and experience as well as data, and so that's been helpful. But I would say that I have to. There's not always perfect solutions, and sometimes moving is more important than you can do paralysis through analysis, and I'm very conscious that that is something that I'm trying to make sure that it doesn't take over any parts of our business. I'd say the biggest learning I have, though, is just centered around talent, right? Invest in talent. Don't squeeze the stick too tight. There are limitations on every business and certainly on ours in terms of cost, but there's certain positions that can really move the needle in a business like this, and A players want to be around A players. So to ensure that, don't squeeze the stick too tight on a budget decision, and get the person that's the right fit, and have confidence in it. And so I'm learning those things as you go along, but that would be a kind of a key piece for me so far.
I feel like for those of us out there listening who don't understand the metaphor of squeezing the stick too tightly, that comes from my sport of hockey, right? When you squeeze the stick too tightly, you shank the puck. Where I want to land this plane with you, Mike, today is you're talking about standing on the shoulders of giants and how big of a legacy George is going to have, already has, like based on your story. But I want to know if you've ever thought about, because we say the model carries the most weight, has that ripple affected into your mindset? Do you think about your legacy at all?
I don't. I think about being successful though, right? And what does success mean? Or it can mean a lot of things, but certainly building a community that, like when I look at the community that has been around B&R for 60 years, and I see them come back and I see them embrace with George, that is so much more powerful than any growth metric or profitability metric. It's just incredible. And they've gone on to create their own travel businesses. And I think that's probably what George would have the most pride in. So building a community of trust and friends at the end of the day, of people that I'll see in 20 years and will want to embrace me and everyone that worked in our team, I think would be super powerful. We definitely have a mandate to grow the business, and I certainly think we can. That'll be part of it. And I have some really amazing young people in my company that I want to show and be able to give more and more opportunities to in their career, and growing the business is part of that. So I really, that's probably the biggest, heaviest thing that I take on is how am I going to grow this business so I can give that opportunity to that employee or those 10 employees so that they see an opportunity to grow and stay in Butterfield Robinson, because I know they want to stay, but they're ambitious. And with a small company, there can be ceilings, right? And so that's the biggest thing for me. If I can create that opportunity and see them grow and make more money and buy their house and satisfy and be happy with their family and where they're at financially, that would be, a huge win for me.
Such a 2.0
amazing
answer right there, right? It's like that ripple effect. So clearly, so much mindset, so much leadership 2.0, so much high performance, everything embedded in this interview. I want to ask our ladies here if they have any final thoughts that they want to leave the audience with before we say goodbye to Mike.
I'm just thoroughly impressed. I'm sorry. I'm a bit taken back just based on, from an Olympic level athlete, investment banker, CEO, and the legacy that you're trying to leave behind and continue. And you probably don't even realize that, but the own thumbprint that you're creating on the business and the team itself, it's magical. I'm just so thoroughly impressed. I really am, Mike.
Yeah, I'd say my final words too, or it's just like the takeaway for me is the focus on the relationships and the relationship building. And I love how that, rippled in right from the challenge that you had at the very beginning in terms of coming on and everybody that had been there for so long looking at you like, who is this guy, to it actually really being part of what you see as, you're part of your mandate in terms of growing the business and the legacy to continue. So, and the inspiration as well for the work that you're trying to do. So thank you so much. I hope our audience got as much out of it as what we did.
Awesome. Guys, this was a ton of fun. Thank you so much. This is great.
We definitely want to make sure that our audience
forgot about
knows where to find you, Mike, because I know so many of our listeners are going to be resonating with this interview. So if anybody out there is feeling really called to connect with you and hear more about your story or ask you any questions, where would you like them to find you?
So they can find our website at butterfield.com. You can get me directly. I'm a pretty accessible person. Mike.Scarola@butterfield.com. And then there's also, general info@butterfield.com if you're just looking to find out more. And then there's also, of course, in the website, top right corner, phone number. We love to chat and talk travel. So if anyone's looking to find out more and get some inspiration on what we do, that's what we love to do. So
I know so many leaders are going to want to book these trips you've been talking about in this interview. That's for damn sure. For anybody else out there listening, please remember to hit like and subscribe and share this episode with a friend, whether they're looking to do some adventure travel or maybe you want to do some with them, or because you see all of the Leadership 2.0 principles that are embedded in this interview. Please go ahead and help us spread this ripple effect. That's how we're changing the way the game is being played forever, Mike. This whole Leadership 2.0 mission that we're on here at Team Elite that we keep referring to, it is everything that you embody in your model. It's human-centric, which is, proven to be the best practices in leadership here in 2025. And now we can see why. So much proof and evidence in his story. For those of you who are looking to learn more about our human-centric Leadership 2.0 programs, we've got, trust and psych safety, building your dream teams, all of this in and around breaking burnout. Please go over to the website, elitehighperformance.com, where you can find all that information on our many locker rooms there. This has been so much fun. We are in a year of co-creation. My last reminder for our folks listening. So if you have any feedback for us in terms of this interview, we want to hear from you. Please send me an email, susan@elitehighperformance.com. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much, guys. It's great.